in a lot of skills, what great looks like is somewhat subjective. How do you account for that?
You're always going to have some degree of subjectivity. You can't get away from that because there are certain skills where evidence is purely perceptual.
Sandra Loughlin, Chief Learning Scientist.
Whether I am a warm communicator is important for some roles, and that can only be determined by asking people around me, do you think Sandra is a warm communicator? And so you're always going to have some degree of that. But we try to get more signal from all of the noise of data by having consistent definitions of skills and rubrics for what behavior, what good looks like, and then by training people on them who are part of their job is giving feedback. And then over time, just because we have so much data, we are able to provide data-driven feedback, helping people grow those skills.
Sandra, it's so good to have you here today. As the way we met is kind of just fortuitous, I guess. I saw some of the things you're sharing on LinkedIn, and I've heard the word skills-based organizations a lot, and I talk about it with clients, but very rarely do I feel like I meet someone who's working at an organization and leading a truly skills-based sort of setup. So I'm very excited to bring you on today and to dive into it a bit. So thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I do love the skills thing, but I love it more from when it talks about learning. And so I love that we're going to kind of try to put those two pieces together.
I love that. Okay, well, let's dive right into it. Maybe just to start, could you define what is a skills-based organization? And maybe you can, at a high level, provide a quick overview of EPAM Systems too, so people understand it in context.
Okay. So EPAM Systems, I'll start there, is a large software engineering company. We're about 30 years old, publicly traded, based in the US with a huge global footprint. And we are a decades-old skills-based organization. And that's actually, we think, one of the keys to our success as a business. The way that we define being skills-based is very much a focus on data and analytics. So for us, skills are critical data about our people and our work. And so to me, a skills-based organization, and certainly what we do, is one that collects validated, like high-quality data on the skills that are required to get work done that needs to be done by the business, collects data on people in the business who can do that work, and then uses those sources of data to make a whole bunch of decisions, certainly across the talent lifecycle. Who do you hire? How do you grow people? How are you giving feedback? What does great employee look like versus one who's not a great fit? But also to use skills data to inform your business strategy and also to make operations in the organization more efficient and effective. So bottom line, for us, a skills-based organization uses great skills data, amongst others, to impact the business.
That's incredible. And by the way, as someone who has worked in enterprises, have seen enterprises try to become more skills-based and really fumble during that process, I know it's hard. So what enables EPAM Systems to actually do this and operate like a truly skills-based organization?
Well, I will say, and I say this a lot, and it's very important to know, we did not have to go through skills transformation like every other company out there, right? They existed, or they are existing now, without tons of skills data, and they will exist in the future with that data, or those data, and they're making decisions based on it. For us, we evolved as a skills-based organization. So we just have a very different story of how we got here. So that's one important factor. But I would say the other thing, and again, this goes back to data, is that for us, all of the data in our entire organization, including and especially all of our people data, all exist in one place. So we don't have data silos. We don't have systems where there are, different skills ontologies. Like for us, everything works together to allow us to get data from all of our systems around people. So our ATS system, our HRIS system, our work systems, all that is going into one place. And that's where we can apply our single source of truth for skills. That's where we have all of our amazing data products and AI and ML and all of this technology to allow us to get the insights around what skills exist, which skills that we need, and then to automatically push data across systems so that we can connect insights that we're getting on a person, for example, in the hiring process, with what they need to upskill on in the learning management system. So it's the data infrastructure here, I think, is one of the most important pieces of our ability to do this well.
Yeah, and that's, I think, when you describe it to me, it's really a standout feature, I think, of the organization, because most enterprises that I see have lots of data sitting in lots of different systems. It's really hard to connect them, let alone like push them. And I think what you described to me in the past was EPAM has all homegrown like systems so that everything kind of flows and you can push like different activities to different platforms, and all of those things allow this mechanism to work, which is incredible machinery. Maybe let's focus on, okay, how do you define a skill at EPAM? Like, so what is a skill? What are some of these attributes? How does it get measured and over time?
When we're talking about skills, we actually don't talk about people first. We talk about work. So the first thing that we do is think about, okay, what are the what are the things that need to get done in the business in order to make customers happy, build products, create technology. Like we think about work first, and then we break work down into meaningful tasks. Then we say, okay, what are the different things that need to come together? What are the skills that are required to get that task done? And then for us, skills are, they exist at different levels of granularity, right? Cloud can be a skill, and but it's huge. And, right, because like, so for a consultant who is engaging on digital transformation journey or conversation or advisory engagement, like we don't need to have super deep information on their cloud skills, but we need them to understand it enough to have intelligent conversations and factor that into their thinking and conversation. On the other end of the spectrum, we have people that are like building cloud architecture, right? So we need to have very, very granular skills still in this cloud category on them so that we can find the best projects to connect them to. So for us, and this is a big difference that I've noticed for other organizations, is that for us, we use one bucket. We use this one word, skills, to actually describe a whole bucket of different things, and essentially they're all kind of, you can click into them, if you will, and get more and more granular. And then we now say, okay, well, who has those skills in the organization? So that's kind of the process. You also asked about how do we get data on who has skills, right? And also what skills are required for work. So broadly speaking, there are two big ways that we get skills data, but many details and ways underneath those two buckets. So the first bucket is using AI inference. So again, we're a software engineering company, like we have very advanced AI and data capabilities. And so we've been turning that on ourselves and have built tremendous amounts of mechanisms and tooling for which we can apply AI and get insights into what skills a person has, what skills a project requires, what are skills that are trending in our industry, what's going up, what's going down, right? So we use tons of inference in a variety of ways to get an idea of what skills a person has. But that's only the beginning. For us, we really need to, because we want to use those data to make decisions, we need high quality data. And so we've also implemented a wide variety of ways that we use humans to validate skills. So, of course, we'll use things like self-report, and we can look and see, what skills or what courses somebody has gone through in their learning management system. But for us, that's information. It's not evidence. And so we get a lot of evidence primarily from people who are observing the work that's being done. Because again, for us, skills are not about what you are capable of doing. It's what you are doing on the job, and the person or people that are best positioned to tell us and tell you if you have those skills are the ones who are observing your work, who know what good looks like.
I love that. And especially the second one really resonates, right? You have to observe the behaviors. One of the things that I see organizations struggle with is being able to get that data consistently from people who have that information. What is a mechanism that, one, incentivizes, and then two, facilitates collection of the data in a timely, high quality, and consistent way?
So there's two sides to that. One is the tooling, right? Do you have the right tooling? Is there a mechanism by which someone that has that information can provide it in a timely fashion to the right people in the right way? That's relatively easy. The harder part is the incentives. And we have solved that by basically giving feedback part of the job description that, project managers at EPAM, for example, are held to. So at EPAM, and this is just true, not just for project managers, but for everybody, because we know what skills we need people to perform in their roles, we have a process of performance management that's informed by skills data, right? So at EPAM, to keep your job or grow in your career, you need to have the skills that are expected of you in your role. And so we've used that infrastructure to basically say, well, project managers, part of your job is to give feedback to people on a regular basis in a again, valid, timely, informative way. And we motivate them to do that by making it part of their performance management process.
And do you see that makes sense that it's still built into your process? One of the things that I would wonder is, in a lot of skills, what great looks like is somewhat subjective, right? And so certain leaders have a very high bar, they have a very high standard, and maybe their definition of excellence is different than somebody else. So how do you account for that in this system? Curious.
So there are ways that we try to address it in the immediate term, which is basically providing high quality rubrics, right? And then training people on what those are. So you're always going to have some degree of subjectivity. You can't get away from that because there are certain skills where evidence is purely perceptual, right? Whether I am, a warm communicator is important for some roles, and that can only be determined by asking people around me, do you think Sandra is a warm communicator? And so you're always going to have some degree of that. But we try to get more signal from all of the noise of data by having consistent definitions of skills and rubrics for what behavior, what good looks like and look fors. And then by training people on them, who are part of their job is giving feedback. And then over time, just because we have so much data, we are able to provide data-driven feedback to the people who are consistently more generous than than all the other people that have given feedback on that person or in that manner, or they are more strict. And so you can only do that when you have tons of data. So this is not what I would try to recommend anybody do today, but for us, and this is it's not a perfect system, but we have both on the front end and the back end guidance and information on exactly that, making sure that people's feedback is done in a valid way, and they are constantly improving their own feedback giving skills.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I definitely agree that you can't move away from a degree of subjectivity, and that is honestly important too, right? Like ultimately the standards of an organization is held up by the individuals and the folks who are really great. It doesn't sit on a rubric. Like a rubric is static. People's judgment are far more complex. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's maybe move to now not skill assessment, but skill development. So of course, part of it is like, where are you? Like, how good are you at these things and what do you need? Like, that's sort of what we cover so far. But then you have to, once you identify opportunities for people to improve their skills to really succeed in their role, you have to give them an opportunity to develop those in a timely and effective way. How do you do that at EPAM?
So I will say, I think that EPAM is the only truly continuous learning culture that I have ever seen in any organization. And I attribute that to the fact that people know what their skills gaps are. They know that they need to fill them. And so they actually seek out and demand high quality learning opportunities. So I think the key to success, right, is not just learning organizations making amazing learning content, right? Because people aren't always going to access that. They need a reason to want to do that. And so that's the foundation, I think. But when you have people who need to learn things and want to learn things, then the question becomes like, what does good learning look like for us? And so there are a number of things that we do that I love. So one is, of course, everything is hyper personalized, right? Like, I can go into a system at EPAM, which knows all the skills that I have, knows, and I can put in a role, any role in the organization. And the system will just automatically populate for me all the different training and learning programs that are available to me to help me essentially like bridge the skills gap between where I am today and where I want to be. But they go so far beyond that too. So we have all of these programs that are, I think one of the terms out there is Capability Academy, right? Where it's content, but it's actually structured social learning that you're doing with peers. It's a huge emphasis on practice and feedback from experts and a connection to real business challenges. And so you have the business who's like looking in this and seeing, creating that motivation for people to want to learn. And the business is then getting value out of that, which then creates this, wonderful cycle of continued investments. But beyond that, we also recognize that the majority of learning actually happens outside of even the most amazing formal learning programs. It happens through reflection and investigation and conversations and attending conferences and following people on LinkedIn and just all of these different sources. And so something else that we do that I love at EPAM is make visible in our learning management system all of these different informal ways for people to grow their skills. We provide communities of practice. We provide mentors. We do talk about who to follow on LinkedIn. We have all these different game-based and just fun activities that are truly learning opportunities and extra mile activities. And all of that stuff we make visible to people, and we support it through, funding, frankly, and resources, so that when we are looking at helping people grow those skills, we're doing it in a way that is truly effective and also reflects, frankly, less expensive and higher value ways to learn.
That's amazing. a question for you. So you seem, in my mind, there's different types of learning approaches are really good for different kinds of skills you're trying to develop, right? Some things are you want to be quick. It's actually largely like understanding quick latest information and trends that you can use in your role, and that honestly is much better delivered through a maybe quick clip or like content that you can read. Other ones require, as you said, like practice and discussion and like reflection, all of these like active experiences. And the latter is usually pretty hard to like scale, right? Because it takes a lot of investment, facilitation, and so on. At a place like EPAM, where skill opportunities are so transparent, I could also imagine like demand for these more formal programs being so like large and like happening ad hoc that it's hard to fulfill those requests. I'm curious how you actually manage like ensuring enough opportunities being there that is like the right kind of formal experiences with people who need them at the moment they need them.
So there's a lot of answers to that. I think the thing that has, from a learning science perspective, the thing that's been one of like incredibly exciting to me is the introduction of generative AI into that dynamic. Because you're right, like coaching and mentorship, it's like that's time intensive and it's costly. And so we have been exploring all of these really incredible ways to leverage technology even more than we already have been to match people who want to learn the same things at the same time who wouldn't otherwise know that, right? Or to put, to build into the flow of work trained coaches who are there just to help you build your architectural approach. And so, I mean, there's lots of different ways that we're doing that, but the answer is foundationally through technology, without losing the fact and the recognition that humans are we're people and we want to learn with and through others. And so we are always looking for new ways to get high quality learning to be available to people at scale. And there's so many cool things coming out on the market these days that we're so excited about because we need people to learn, and we want to be able to do it well in a cost effective manner.
Yeah, it looks like you generally, EPAM has been really good at taking innovations that are coming out and using it to continuously add to scalability in ways that doesn't compromise quality. Moving beyond sort of like the mechanics of developing people in this skills-based organization, have you noticed specific mindsets that are required among the leaders and employees for a skills-based organization to actually thrive?
Yes. And again, we didn't have to move this rock up the hill. So it's always been at EPAM. But I think one of the most, the most foundational mindset, I guess there's two of them. One is that people are the driver of your business. So you can set a business strategy all you want, but if your organization, the people in it, are not tuned to where you're trying to go, if your engine's not going to get you there, you won't achieve that. And so, so many leaders, I think, people in general, gravitate to, when business change occurs, AI as a great example, they think first about the technology and don't really, I guess, appreciate the complexity of how to get all the people to, like, again, tuning your engine to a whole new direction. So I think having a deep appreciation for the people are the critical driver of strategy. That's the first mentality. The second one is an orientation toward data-driven decision making. So again, skills are just data, right? And they're not the only important source of data. There are many. They are one of the most important sources in my point of view, but they're only one. but the idea that, you as a leader would not want better and more information on frankly your biggest cost and your biggest opportunity, your biggest product is your people. And so just being oriented toward data, feeling comfortable with understanding the trade-offs associated with getting high quality data, and when do you lean in on the data to make decisions, when do you factor in a bunch of other things. This comfort and just orientation, I think, is foundational to the success of any skills-based organization, because really it's just data to inform business decisions. That's all.
Yeah, I want to actually dovetail on the second point you made, right, around data-driven decision making. And the statement you said is people are usually, in most organizations, your biggest sort of cost base and the biggest investment you make. And yet, I think actually a lot of times people underinvest in skills and L&D and things like that because measurement of impact of those things are hard and feels soft, right? Curious at EPAM, what have been the tangible business impact of being skills-based? And how do you think about it such that the executives really buy into it and invest into it?
So again, we are in a bit of a different position because our biggest cheerleader for this has always been our founder, who is still our CEO. The fact, all of the things that we've built internally really, I think, is a testament to the fact that the mentalities that we just talked about are deeply embodied in him and then in our entire executive team. And again, we don't have an A/B case. So it's not like I can say, before skills, this was our role fit index, or, before skills, here was our time to hire. We just always have evolved this way. But I can tell you that the infrastructure, because again, it's all homegrown, that we have to support our skills orientation is extremely expensive, right? It is a massive investment for our company. And we have continued to invest in it because we deeply believe, that it has been the reason that we are agile as a business. EPAM has transformed our core business 4 or 5 times at this point. We're doing it again right now through, in response to and leveraging AI. There is no way, I think, that we could have done as well as we have done without having this infrastructure in place to know what skills we need, know who has them, and then have the ability to motivate people to fill those skills gaps and actually begin working in new ways. So for us, and I know it's very difficult to quantify, but the executives at EPAM know deeply in our hearts that skills is the reason, and skills data and decision making around it is the reason that we have been agile, and we will continue to invest in it, because being agile is one of the most critical value propositions for our clients, and our ability to remain competitive going forward.
This is maybe the third time I hear you talk about the amazing aspects of the skills-based organization in EPAM, and every time I hear it, it feels like sci-fi movie. because I've seen, right, what alternatives generally are like, because it's extremely difficult to accomplish the state of the system that you describe. When people join EPAM for the first time, are they shocked? I'm just curious what usually the reactions are.
People so they're both shocked and happy, right? So I think no company is a real meritocracy, right? Doesn't exist. But I think it's intuitive to people that skills should be one of the major sources of data on how they're judged, right? Who gets brought into the organization, who's being matched to work, who's getting promoted. So much of that at other organizations is based on I actually don't know what it's based on. It's based on a whole lot of things that are not actually like what someone brings to their job every day from a skills perspective. And so when people at EPAM see this, they're just amazed and excited because it allows them to feel seen, like where their skills are actually like front and center. But it also, because of the myriad benefits they receive from this. So, I can go into a system and put in any role in the company and see exactly like how to get there. I know that when I go up for promotion, my promotion decision isn't being made by a single person who actually, it might be in their best interest to keep me exactly where I am. Instead, you're getting, your skills are being validated by peers randomly assigned who are trained in skills validation, who are the ones to actually make the case of whether or not I should get a promotion. Like these are the kinds of things that having this approach and the infrastructure allows us to do. It creates for employees a much more, you're more confident, you have more clarity. You just, you, people love working at EPAM, and a large part of it, and you'll see people who have left and come back. Like they'll say, like, we just can't, we don't have that same feeling in other organizations. And it's not because other organizations can't get there. They're just not there today. And this is why I think we have the retention and engagement and numbers that we do. It's because people love being in an environment where that's what matters.
Yeah. It's like, it feels like a much fairer system, and transparent system. I'm curious, actually. You know what this conversation reminds me of is it's such an opinionated way of operating that is very different than what the norm. And it reminds me of reading about Bridgewater, it's a financial like management firm. They have a concept of radical transparency. It's different than how you describe skills, but there's something interesting about how they turn these things into like transparent data that people can look at. I'm curious, at EPAM, do you see certain kinds of personalities really staying longer and other people sort of opting to leave as a result? And it creating a very distinctive culture as a result?
No, not that I can. That's the sort of thing that I've observed. And now that I think about it, I don't see a pattern. But you also need to understand that our approach is very different than Bridgewater's approach. And like, I don't want to kind of go into all of that detail here, but there's a lot of psychological safety at EPAM because we are marrying this transparent skills data, which people and people, again, like I know my skills and the information that's going to my manager or whoever is the same information that I am seeing. So that's a very different, I think, that it's very comforting to know that I know exactly how I'm showing up. But it's also because we have such a support structure in place to help people fill those gaps, right? And it's a universal thing. Everyone's skills are transparent. The decision-making processes are the same across different roles, and because of the learning infrastructure, this like the informal learning, the mentorship, the communities of practice, just this idea that we're in this together, we're gonna get better, and like the company is missing skills. It's like there's just I think a general recognition that this is a safe place to be in. And so it doesn't privilege people who are more, I don't know, extroverted. It doesn't privilege people who are, more popular than others, because there are so many data sources that we get around skills. Many of them, again, coming from systems of work, not just personal feedback. That it just creates an environment where it's not scary to have skill gaps because you feel like you can build them in the time that you have to build them.
Okay, that's amazing. That the marrying of the data, but creating a psychologically safe environment. I think that's a very delicate balance to strike. Um, you did mention a couple times that for EPAM, it wasn't a transformation from A to B. It sort of organically always had this ethos because of the founders and their belief about this. But I'm okay, but curious if you have a perspective on which type of organizations is becoming skills based worth it versus which types of organizations you say actually wouldn't recommend this. This is too much of an overkill to do.
I don't know that anyone would reasonably say, no, we don't need data on our people. Like, let's not have data. So I don't know that it's a question of skills based or not. I think it's a matter of how skills based are you? And I think that's going to differ certainly by industry, but also within any single organization. So the most obvious industry where this makes sense is professional services, because what are you selling? You're selling your people. You're matching your people's skills to the work required for your clients. And like, you just want to do that in the most effective, transparent, and accurate way possible. And that's, again, we are a professional services firm. That's how it all got started for us. And we have incredibly high quality data on the majority of the company who are client facing in professional, like consulting or software engineering or whatever roles. We do have data on other roles. Like, we have skills data on our HR business partners, for example, but it's not as good, right? Like the quality of the data, the number of data points, the number of different sources of data, like the different types of data sources that we have for them, the depth of the data for any one of those points, the quality of the data for the skills of our HR business partners is not the same. Because from a business perspective, it costs money to get high quality data. And so for us, we invest in that for roles that are closer to P&L. And for us, those are our client facing roles. But that's not to say that we're not skills based on the HR side of the organization. We are, but we don't rely as heavily on those data. We know they're not going to be as good. And so the approach that we take for using the data, it's just more cautious because it should be more cautious. And I think that's going to be true of every organization. I'm not sure that for any company, there are going to be roles that are closer to P&L, and those roles are going to be different based on different industries. But I think it's going to be more worthwhile to get better quality skills data on those roles, just because, again, like, they're driving your P&L. But that's not to say that you won't have any data on others. I don't know. I guess it's a long way of saying, like, it depends, and it should depend, because, again, skills is it's a business information tool. And you want to have higher quality tools in some industries and in some parts of any organization, regardless of the industry.
What you say really resonates as sitting on the side of a technology sort of solution provider. We have definitely seen higher interest in like real investment in skill development in sectors where people are your core product. Like that it is very directly tied to P&L. Like the way that your people show up with your clients and engage actually influences like how successful the business is in a very direct way. And the way I used to say is like, if your company is like producing widgets as a main thing, and like the widgets are being sold through like without like human sort of touch, that investment tends to be less than I see in organizations like professional services. So what you shared really resonates. Maybe the sort of final reflection question here might be, you know, you now having you've worked other places and then you've come into EPAM and seen how this thing works. Feels like in its own fantasy land in some sense. Have you learned anything particular about like human nature or how learning really happens or how people get motivated, or what makes working together as humans great, from this experience?
I mean, I'm a psychologist, so I've always thought the human part is so important. I guess one of the most critical things that I have learned, which I suppose I don't know why I didn't realize this earlier, but how much of being able to do good things for people, to motivate them and educate them and help them build community, how much that depends on two things. One is just your technology and your data infrastructure. Like you can do amazing things in small pockets, but in order to scale those amazing things to a global organization, you just can't do it without the proper infrastructure. And so that's something that I think I've really begun to appreciate and see patterns where that's actually one of the biggest issues with organizations in many cases. The other thing that I've really begun to appreciate more and more is the fact that everything in an organization is designed around getting people to want to be there, to do good work. And that leaders don't do a good job with that a lot. And that's because I think that they just have some fallacies around what it takes to motivate and educate people. So a lot of the initiatives that I see in organizations, the big change initiatives, digital transformation, skills transformation, AI transformation, any of that stuff, leaders often attack that by talking about how important it is and then offering training. And that's not a lot more goes into that. But when you think about what it takes to get people to behave differently, to want to stay in your organization, to, whatever it is, there are so many things that create friction inside of organizations that leaders don't appreciate. Misaligned incentive structures, poor tooling, bad processes, metrics that are completely unrelated to or maybe working against the initiatives that you're pushing forward, how budgeting happens. All of these hidden components of organizations are really what need to be considered when you're thinking about how do we make this big change happen. It's not just about what skills people have. It's all of the other components that exist around them in their environment. And a lot of those things, I don't think that leaders understand and talk about enough, and certainly don't look at as levers when trying to drive culture change or transformation within their organization.
So beautifully said. I love that. Yeah, no, it really resonates. Especially, I think it resonated deeply because I've sat on the side of being a consultant, helping to drive transformation, and you called it the hidden sides of how the organization works. I actually think those things influence significantly how effectively and efficiently the team runs. It's like the oil that lubricates the gears, but it's very nebulous. It's hard to label the thing, but it's actually the thing that's much more important. And oftentimes today, when I look at really high performing teams, it's actually because you have a few players in the teams, they take on the role of lubricating the thing. But their work is rarely really easy to spot and appreciate, but it's super key, like the orchestrator role. And it seems like that at EPAM, you've actually systematized it with infrastructure and processes such that that is easy for more people to do than requiring on some human ingenuity to be the orchestrator. Anyways, this was great, Sandra. Thanks so much for taking the time here. I learned a ton. It's fascinating. I really would invite lots of people to try to understand and learn from EPAM because, again, it sounds like Neverland to me. But
I mean, we have lots of problems too. I could have an entire show on all the problems that we have. So it is, but it's a pretty amazing place. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to learning from you more beyond this episode. But talk soon again.
Yes, thank you so much for the time.